All right. Just went through some technical difficulty, more technical difficulty. That's just part and parcel for the course, for what I do here. My hair's a mess. I just took a shower, didn't do it. So, hello, everybody. Just going to get a quick one in here. I know this isn't quick. It's going to be probably longer than yesterday's, but here's Armenia. All right, a few headlines. Let's just zoom in over here and read a few. Before I do that headline, I just want to read these headlines. Remind you about this. It's happening on Monday. Some prominent Armenians and historians talking about the assassination of Talat Pasha exactly 100 years ago on March 15th. I'll put the link in the description. You can watch on YouTube, or you can register for the Zoom webinar, and even, I guess, ask questions. I guess there's probably some Q&As for after each session, something like that. Also, big news for those of you watching who would like to meet me in person on that day, March 15th. It looks like I'm going to be in Fresno at Ararat Cemetery at the gravesite of Soghomon Tehlirian. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be there. I like to go visit when I go on road trips in that direction, and I'm going to be up there on that day. I figure that's the right day to be there. I don't know exactly what time. It'll be in the morning, somewhere between 9 and noon. I plan to be there, so if you are in the Fresno area and want to meet me in person, I'll have a more specific time that I'll post in the video, I guess, by Friday. All right, let's read a couple headlines before I read some articles. Armenia legislature chief of staff submits resignation. Armenian MP Pashinyan afraid that deputies of his ruling party will elect opposition candidate for prime minister. Majority leader consultations with Armenia parliamentary opposition are taking place. Why is this not working? Ugh. That's not what I wanted to do. These technical issues. All right, I'm just going to read this article. Latest on Armenian political crisis, Aliyev's joint transport project with Turkey. One thing I realized while I was in Armenia, that the date here in America or in the West, I don't know what countries, but we usually put the month first, then the day, and then the year. But encountered in Europe, in certain countries, they put the day first, then the month, then the year. So this is day 10, the 10th of March, the third month. So it's current. What does it say? This updates on some stuff. The 2-week confrontation between the government and the armed forces entered the government and the armed forces. So the military heads in Armenia are in opposition with the prime minister. I've mentioned that previously, and this is an update. The 2-week confrontation between the government and the armed forces entered a new phase on Wednesday. The prime minister's office announced that Onik Gasparian is legally dismissed from the post of chief of general staff of the armed forces. The prime minister has already submitted a petition. Why is this not? For the appointment of the former chief of the general staff, Artsakh Davtyan, to that position, which the president has not yet signed. Davtyan was relieved of the post of chief of the general staff for celebrating his son's wedding during the quarantine amid COVID-19 restrictions. Interesting. As an aside here, for those of you who don't know, there's a president of Armenia and a prime minister of Armenia, and the prime minister is Nikol Pashinyan. The president, I think, is Sarkisian. But in Armenia, the prime minister is the one who actually has political power. I'm not clear on. There was a transition that happened a couple years ago, just actually a couple months before I visited Armenia. You guys can comment in the section to clear that up for me. What's the deal? Why do they have a president and a prime minister? It's like in a monarch, a king and a prime minister in England, whereas the parliament has power in England and the monarch is just a figurehead. I don't know if the president's just a figurehead. I don't know. After that, he was appointed chairman of the Military Industry Committee, but resigned after the war. And yesterday, by the decision of the Minister of Defense, he was appointed a senior officer on special assignments. Today, the prime minister's statement was followed by Onik Gasparian's statement, who said that he had applied to the administrative court. So this is Gasparian is who Pashinyan has dismissed from the head of the military, and I guess Gasparian is appealing to the court. In his statement, he urged the generals, officers, and soldiers to continue their service. After that, the leadership of the armed forces made a statement noting the command staff of the RA Armed Forces joined the message of Colonel General Onik Gasparian and confirms the assessments given so far on the current situation in the Republic. President Artsakh, who did not sign the order to release Onik Gasparian, has 3 days to sign the decree appointing Artsakh Davtyan, and the decree will enter into force even if he refuses to sign it. Gosh, what a nightmare going on over there. The Prime Minister submitted a proposal to dismiss Onik Gasparian from the post of Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces back on February 25th, as Gasparian was among those who demanded Pashinyan's resignation. On February 27th, the Prime Minister's office received the President's objection to the above-mentioned draft. Artsakh said that he would not sign Onik Gasparian's dismissal decree and would apply to the Constitutional Court to challenge the constitutionality of the law on the basis of which the Prime Minister had submitted his proposal. Turkey and Azerbaijan, gotta love all of this. Despite the calls made by different political forces, Artsakh did not dispute the motion to dismiss Onik Gasparian from the post in the Constitutional Court. Some lawyers claim that the Constitution does not authorize the President or the Prime Minister in general to dismiss the Chief of General Staff of the Armed Forces. On Tuesday evening, when it became known that the deadline for Armenian President Artsakh to dispute Pashinyan's offer to dismiss Onik Gasparian has expired, the opposition protest near the Armenian parliament has escalated. The opposition Prime Minister's candidate, Vazgen Manoukian, has called on the protesters to block all the ways to the parliament so that the Prime Minister, the MPs, could not enter the building. The police tried to put pressure on protesters that led to clashes with the protesters. However, the participants managed to close all the doors that the MPs used to enter the building. Protesters also set up tents and spent the night there. They were called traitors. They were called traitors, all of those MPs whom they saw passing nearby, thus provoking with some of the parliament members. The main entrances of the building are still being closed. The MPs are forced to enter the building with the door that is being used for the food supply. The opposition said that they're going to protest until the the Prime Minister resigns or the MPs impeach Pashinyan. Oh, I could keep reading all this, but let's get to some good news. Well, let me read this other thing. Armenian, Russian defense ministers discuss military operation issues. This is really short from Armen Press, but I just want to read it. Defense Minister of Armenia, Artsakh Harutyunyan, held a telephone conversation with Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu on March 10th, and as Armen Press was informed from the press service of the Defense Minister of Armenia, the defense ministers discussed a number of issues related to the Armenian and Russian military cooperation. The sides also referred to the process of the mission conducted by the Russian peacekeeping forces in Nagorno-Karabakh and regional security issues. Those of you who are just getting caught up, there are peacekeepers from Russia in Azerbaijan, and that's why there's no hostilities. I mean, there's stuff going on. And I'm going to read this next article that's some good news, but it also sheds some light on what's been going on. So, Maral Najarian released from Azerbaijani captivity. So Azerbaijan is keeping some prisoners of war. So they are violating international law by doing so. The war is over, supposedly. After 4 months of captivity in Azerbaijan, Lebanese Armenian Maral Najarian was released Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. Wednesday local time. She boarded a flight from Baku to Istanbul. From there, she departed for Beirut. She's reportedly back home, surrounded by family, friends, and community well-wishers. I received a phone call this morning when I was at hospital, and I dropped my equipment after hearing the news of Maral's release, said Najarian's sister, Sosi, who is a nurse at a local Beirut hospital. I told them I'm taking the day off and dashed home. I cannot describe what we are feeling right now. We can't wait to greet her at the airport, added Sosi Najarian, who explained that they had been told by the International Committee for the Red Cross to keep the news confidential until her safe return. There she is. March 10 marks a symbolic and heartbreaking milestone for Armenians since it will months since the signing of that agreement that ended the military aggression in Artsakh. On the same day, civilians Najarian and Viken Yurjekian traveling from Yerevan to Shushi via Berdzor were captured by Azerbaijani forces, both originally from Lebanon, but holding Armenian citizenship, were on their way from Yerevan to Artsakh in Viken's car to collect Maral's luggage from her hotel in Berdzor and Viken's luggage from his flat in Shushi before the handover. Regrettably, they were captured in their vehicle between Berdzor and Shushi by Azerbaijani forces before the Russian peacekeepers arrived in Nagorno-Karabakh. 2 weeks later, messages started pouring from Azerbaijan, some true but mostly fake. Yet it became clear that Maral and Viken were transferred to a prison in Azerbaijan. Maral's family and her elderly mother in particular were tormented day and night by shocking messages about Maral posted by the Azerbaijanis on her Facebook page, including that she was raped and killed. Maral is the nicest, kindest person I have ever come across, and her neighbor said her neighbor Anahit Tarkanian in Beirut. She was so popular in the community here. The waiting list for her beauty salon was so long as everyone, men and women, wanted to be served by Maral. Everybody loved her and regretted she decided to settle in Armenia. Unlike typical hairdressers, Maral is rather quiet and reserved, does not chat with clients, but is extremely skillful in her job. She is beautiful inside and out. After the family moved to the newly built... Okay, it goes on and goes on. I wanted to read one part of this. As Maral was unlawfully imprisoned near Baku, her extended family in Beirut and Yerevan have been campaigning for her release. Maral is one of 7 siblings born in Beirut to a tight-knit Armenian family which endured its own struggles through the political turmoil in Lebanon and the recent economic crisis. The older sister, Sosi Najarian, a longtime nurse in a local hospital, has been campaigning for her release in Beirut, while her younger, more proactive sister Annie is in Yerevan, has been knocking at every official's door and dealing with the local and international media. 4 months since the November 9 agreement, more than 230 Armenian POWs are still being held by Azerbaijan. Unlike the Azerbaijani authorities, the Armenian side has adopted a constructive approach by returning all Azerbaijani prisoners of war held in Armenia. Nonetheless, Azerbaijani forces continue to kidnap Armenian soldiers and civilians, both men and women, in post-war Karabakh. So I've been a little bit out of the loop, not knowing that this was happening, that the Azerbaijanis are still capturing Armenians. Lebanese Armenian, the guy who was driving with Maral from Yerevan on November 10th, still remains in captivity in Baku. His only crime was to have decided to collect his belongings from his Shushi home before the handover, when the pair were captured near Shushi. Among the newly captured 64 soldiers in December, a full month after the ceasefire, only 8 have been returned, while 6 soldiers lost in forests in Nagorno-Karabakh waiting to be rescued for 50 days were captured and brutally murdered by the Azerbaijani forces in January. Evidence of the reprehensible maltreatment of Armenian POWs and captives have been cataloged in the latest report by Armenian human rights defender Arman Tatoyan. While world leaders continue to remain impartial over the recent Artsakh war, Azerbaijani war crimes and violations of international human rights agreements is impossible to ignore by the free world and organizations safeguarding human rights and universal values. All right, so I said there was some good news. Yes, this is good news, but there's also a bunch of bad news. It's still going on. All right, subscribe and share, and I will see you guys tomorrow.